It's that time of the day before the final and you don't know what to do and still trying to cram everything and really sleep deprived like everyone else. So here are the best tips for not to cram.
Hello, welcome back to Stella on Air, and I'm actually going to remove this silly little hairband that Chinese wear when they are trying to go through their test. So please kids, listen up to me. Don't be watching this video when you're actually supposed to be studying. So now, back to the main topic. It's how to study with scientifically backed up tips. That's the most important thing. There will be 2 parts in the video, and the first part will be dealing with 6 popular but not efficient techniques in the way that we study, and the other half there will be 3 tips that I try to implement to you guys on how to study efficiently. The first tip is condensing notes or summarizing. Surprisingly, I actually do this tip quite a lot even with microbiology right now. I'm just copying from the PPT and trying to find out what's the main point throughout the teacher's lectures. It is pretty useful when you're trying to make a scaffold or outline of things that need to study, but for coding the materials into your mind for testing, it's not useful at all because you're not actively recalling and asking yourself what is the correct points. And summarizing takes freaking a lot of energy to do and tons of training if you want to be good at it. So the second inefficient technique is you rereading over your notes, and this is actually one of the most popular ones that everybody do. They just stare at the PPT or like lecture and scroll through the whole thing, and somehow it will magically go into your brain without you putting the effort into it. There's this book related to the scientific of learning which is called Make It Stick, and there's actually a quote from there saying about how rereading is really not efficient. I'll read this quote to you guys right now. Rereading has 3 strikes against it. It is time consuming, it doesn't result in durable memory, and it often involves a kind of unwitting self-deception. Reading text and mass practice of a skill or new knowledge are by far the preferred study strategies of learners of all stripes, but they're among the least productive. Among the least productive should the part be underlined. Like, it seems like you're working at encoding things into your mind, but this is just the encoding step. It doesn't work for reviewing and studying. Reviewing is now rereading your notes. So the third one is highlighting, underlining, and color coding. Those 3 parts actually is similar to rereading, but you're just highlighting the main points. It also gives you a false deception that you are studying and re-highlighting, you're understanding and putting the effort, but the information is actually not just going into your mind. It's pretty much just similar to rereading the thing over and over again. 4 is cramming without understanding, or cramming on the last night of the exam. We all have that instant gratification monkey living in our mind. Whenever we need to study, we just procrastinate and scroll through memes or Instagram posts or YouTube videos, like watching this one, but please don't do it. And whenever the deadline comes in like a week or 3 days, panic monster will be hopping out of our mind and steering the wheel of the boat and trying to get us back on track, rocketing us towards that final goal to finish the studying or end product. As a lifelong learner believer, I don't think this will be really sustainable. It's really easy for burnout, and those information wants to stay in your mind, which is actually the purpose of learning. You have to be in a love relationship with the knowledge you're learning. Well, cramming might work for just the test itself, but if you want the information to retain for the rest of your job career, which is really important if you're in medical or health profession, because you always use those knowledge once you're in that specific field of study, no matter if it's cardiology, dermatology, or pediatric. Those information, you still need to use it every day. So it's better that you encode and memorize those information and know how to use it throughout your study process in your school. This method just doesn't work because you're going against the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Those information are not in love with you. You gotta endorse in the learning process. Just trust the process. So the 5th technique is that handwriting out your notes instead of typing them. You need to have that brain to muscle connection. There's like this really weird sensation when you start writing. Scientific studies have proven this, of showing this muscle to brain connection thingy. Now I'm gonna read you a quote from a study showing this. Together, the study provide evidence that handwriting experience results in the recruitment of letter-specific neural processing regions and may be important for setting up the neural system that will be responsible for processing letters once an individual becomes literate. This experiment is talking about kids learning how to read and write, and then it's actually a lot of effort of retaining those words, and to have that neural connection going, they tested the children of handwriting the notes and just looking at it and typing it in a less of engaging way. This study somehow resembles what we're doing, but instead of kids, we're adults now. So we gotta put in that effort in handwriting notes. The sixth is keyword mnemonics. And honestly, I love this one. It adds like a little spice to studying since biochem is like such a pain in the butt. A year ago when I was studying it, I remember a really funny mnemonic in biochem. It says like this: can I keep something more sex, officer? It actually resembles the chemical products that are produced from the Krebs cycle. The C is citrate, and other than that, I don't remember anything because citrate is the citric acid cycle, or it's called the Krebs cycle. If you remember name by Krebs cycle, you don't even know the C is citric in this case. This process is not as good because you might not associate the mnemonic to the product that you're actually learning. It's just a key tip in just memorizing and cramming, but for a lifelong learner that we're all achieving for, this is actually not that of an efficient technique. There's also a study that has proven this, and I'll read a part of the conclusion to you guys. McDaniel compared the keyword mnemonic with a strategy whereby new vocabularies were studied in a meaningful context. They found immediate recall was significantly better using the keyword strategy, but after a week, recall was comparable using either strategy. Like at the point of remembering it, if you put the information in context of understanding in that field of study, it will be a lot easier for you to retain it.
Hello from Editing Priscilla. I forgot to mention about something that's really important about Mnemonics. It's that Mnemonics can be a tool that's very useful after you have studied the material and you have understood it. It will be a tool that will be really helpful in the readiness of the recall. You can just trigger your brain with that cue and you can recall that piece of information instantly. That's how you're supposed to use it. So it's not entirely bad, but you have to use it in the correct way.
Actually, for studying, you should start off with the topics that you're the most unfamiliar with, because those you spend the most time studying and retain it into your brain, and those should be get out of the way first. Okay, let's get back to filming. So the first tip is actually understanding the content before you even start memorizing it. I think it's the most critical point, because without gaining understanding and having a mental scaffold or having a mind map in your mind saying what part of information belongs to which, it's still really hard to understand this new piece of information without having the old information, because knowledge is built on top of each other. Everything is interconnected in this field of study. It can be really easy for you to understand when you have the knowledge of the previous level of that specific knowledge. I tend to use YouTube, Google, and textbooks for those understanding, and then once that light bulb clicks in your mind, you have to know when that light bulb clicks. When you gain that understanding, it will be so much easier for you to memorize and active recall. I can show you guys some notes that I've taken for the past classes. I'll put them on the side just for reference, like how I'm understanding things. But everybody's understanding is really different, because you have to actually use the trial and error process, like that scientific mindset that all scientists should have. We should trial and error through all types of studying methods. So now after the first tip, and now onto the second part, which is testing. Testing is actually using the effect called testing effect. This forces you to retain your memory because you're putting effort into testing it. So there's two parts in this. You gotta space it out and you gotta test yourself, which is called active recall. The first part is called spaced repetition. Essentially, it means spacing out your studies in intervals. This interval makes a lot of sense when you start doing it. And now I'm gonna explain the scientific part back of it. So let's skip into the graph and I'll explain it while I'm drawing the graph.
So this is the most famous Ebbinghaus curve of memory. Initially, we just plot y-axis as retention, which is how much you remember, and time on the x-axis. The forgetting curve looks very intimidating here. It seems like you have learned everything on the day of study, but after a while you just forget. This graph seems like you're in a water park sliding on the water slide and heading towards the forgetting endpoint, which is the test.
You need to review every single time after you're trying to forget. You need to review every single time when you are forgetting the knowledge, which is a really hard place for you to get when you're not even trying to implement the strategy. So the first few times will be really hard to find when to review again. So the curve goes down like this, right? And you're supposed to study at the point at the end of the curve before you forget everything, and it goes up again and it goes down, it goes up and go down again. So you require less effort to retain this knowledge because you're just repeating it on an interval, so that put in less effort as you go on with the rest of the week or the day. It generally works like this. The first few days of studying interval will be really close. The studying will be every single day, and later it goes on throughout your weeks. It might be studying every 2 or 3 days or every week before the test. It depends on how you plan out your study session. And if you're interested, I can make another video on how to plan your study sessions. And then the second part of this testing phase is active recall, aka as testing yourself. Active recall is just another fancy way. There's actually so many ways to do this. I think the strategy works the best on the information that you don't know the most, and you start asking yourself in this field of knowledge, for example, microbiology, metabolism, or the classification system of microbiology. You start by asking yourself, what do I know about the metabolism of bacteria? And you start typing out the things that you know, and you can get those out of the way first, and then you can study on the things that you don't know. There's actually many methods in doing this. ninja hand. You can tune this active recall method in a way that your teacher is supposed to test you on. For example, if it's multiple choice or it's short question or it's essay type question. If it's an essay type question, you try to educationally guess what the teacher would try to test you on. For example, listing out the possible questions and writing an essay for every single of them and trying to remember all those essay formats, hoping for the best that your question will come up on the test. For multiple choice questions, you can type out your own multiple choice question. For example, like I did last year for anatomy, we have to learn about the trigeminal nerve and all the nerves that go through your head and through your cranium. Make a lot of fun things with the multiple choices and trick people, and you'll essentially know which choice is right or wrong because you wrote it and you know the reason why this choice is wrong. And then the other part is writing your own short answers. Short answer, you can't really get really creative, but you can do this maneuver thing and it's not as fun compared to the multiple choice, but it's still a good practice. See, the short answer is the easiest way for you to do recall. You just ask yourself, what are the types of blah blah blah, or explain blah blah, explain, describe, or what and how it occur. So it's explain, describe, why, and how are those words that you can trigger yourself to explain your understanding. You can trick your brain to explain how you understand this piece of specific knowledge and really retain a lot better. Other strategy also include testing your friends or asking questions to them if you don't like testing yourself. It's just fun studying with other people in a group, but the group of people has to be small. It can't be over like 5 people, 4 people is the maximum. Once the study groups get too big, you won't be focusing. Some people might ask you questions. If they ask you questions, you can answer them and you can test them. So it's pretty much teaching them or answering their questions or testing them. Those are all pretty fun. Another strategy can be using Anki flashcards or Quizlets. I can show you a Quizlet side that I do for microbiology and special anatomy and Spanish because I'm learning Spanish in Spain, and it actually takes all the effort in learning a language. Plus, I don't have much Spanish friends and I have to recall those vocabs in my mind. And another strategy can be, if the material is really hard, you can draw mind maps and outlines or just picture diagrams of what you're learning. For example, for biochemical processes or anatomy and physiology things. I think it makes a really big difference when you write out the processes with little pictures on the side to remind you what's happening. So now, a recap for the video. The 6 inefficient techniques are rereading, rewriting your notes, summarizing them, and color coding, underlining them. Handwriting your notes is better than typing, and the last one is using memory mnemonics when you're actually not understanding the things. So the 3 important strategies for you to boost your learning and retain your information is, the first one is make sure you understand everything through your notes or Google. Just understand your knowledge before you try to study them, and I can make another video about this if you guys are interested. Second one is spaced repetition, and 3 is active recall. So hopefully this video is good for you guys, and good luck on your exams and make it to your best effort. Make that muscle and brain connection going, just a good thing. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I don't know why I'm gonna say this again. And hopefully I'm gonna see you next week. Bye bye!